They didn't call her by her name anymore. Names required familiarity, and familiarity required care. Instead, she stood behind a metal rail while strangers judged her. Worth clipped, voices and sideways glances. On the board above her head, written in thick, careless black marker, were the words that had replaced her identity: female, 22, healthy, marketed as fertile. The last word was underlined, as if emphasis could turn possibility into fact. Clara kept her eyes lowered, but she could still feel them looking at her, measuring her hips, the curve of her stomach, the thinness of her arms. Every whisper landed like a bruise. Fertile, my ass. Too quiet, too pale. Probably another lie to jack up the price. She had heard these same lines before, in different rooms, under different lights. Each time, the promise attached to her body failed to convince. Each time, someone decided she wasn't worth the risk. She hadn't always been this empty inside. When she believed the doctors, when they said she might be able to carry a child. Might was all the agency needed. They dressed her up, fed her better for a few months, and sold hope using her face. When contracts fell through and tests came back inconclusive, the hope curdled into suspicion. Now she was damaged goods, advertised loudly, desired quietly by no one. The auctioneer cleared his throat, his voice echoing in the wide room. He started the price higher than anyone expected. Silence answered him. He tried again, lowering it. Still nothing. The sound of boots shifting, someone coughing, the buzz of a failing light overhead. Everything except a bid. Clara's chest tightened as the number dropped again. Each decrease felt personal, like watching her value drain in real time. Then the door at the back creaked open. The sound cut through the room, sharp and slow. A man stepped inside, tall, broad-shouldered, dust clinging to his boots and the hem of his coat. He looked out of place among the polished shoes and clipped suits. His hat stayed in his hands, his gaze steady, unreadable. He didn't glance at the board or ask questions. He didn't smirk or scoff. He looked directly at Clara, not like she was a gamble, not like she was a label, like she was a person standing in a room where no one had bothered to see her. The silence broke when the man lifted his hand. It wasn't hurried or uncertain, just a simple motion that felt too calm for a room built on desperation. "I'll take her," he said, his voice low but clear enough to carry. A ripple of disbelief moved through the crowd, followed by a few sharp laughs. Someone muttered that he must be joking. The auctioneer frowned, peering at him as though trying to find the catch. "Sir," the auctioneer said carefully, "you understand she's being offered with no guarantees. The fertility claim is unverified." The man nodded once. "I heard what you said." "That means there's a risk," the auctioneer pressed. "No refunds, no legal recourse." "I'm not here for a refund," he replied. His eyes never left Clara, and that was somehow worse than if he'd stared at the board. "I'm here because I don't trust your paperwork more than my own judgment." Clara's breath hitched. No one had ever spoken about her like that. Like she existed beyond a line of text and a hopeful adjective. The bidding stalled. No one else raised a hand. Whatever curiosity the crowd felt wasn't strong enough to turn into competition. They watched instead, waiting for the man to change his mind. He didn't. The gavel came down with a dull crack that echoed in Clara's ears. "Sold," the auctioneer announced, already sounding bored, as if the moment had failed to live up to its potential. A handler unlatched the rail and gestured for Clara to move. Her legs felt unsteady as she stepped forward, the room blurring at the edges. She expected the man to reach for her arm, to guide her like the others had. He didn't touch her. Outside, the air smelled like dust and sun-warmed metal. The noise of the auction faded behind them. The man removed his hat and held out a canteen instead. "You look like you haven't had water in a while," he said. There was no command in his tone, no expectation. "Just an offer." She took it with shaking hands, drank, and then waited. He seemed in no hurry to speak, as though silence didn't bother him. Finally he asked, "What's your name?" The question caught her off guard. "Clara," she answered, the word feeling strange in her mouth, unused. "I'm Eli Morgan," he said. "I don't need you to be what they claimed you were." Her fingers tightened around the canteen. "Then why buy me?" Eli studied her for a long moment, not with calculation, but with something quieter. "Because everyone in there decided what you were worth." without asking. "Who you are," he said.
I figured I'd rather find that out myself.
For the first time since she'd been labeled and listed and sold, Clara felt something shift, fragile and frightening like the beginning of hope she didn't know how to carry. Life on Eli's ranch unfolded at a pace that felt unreal to Clara. There were no schedules pinned to walls, no strangers evaluating her with practiced smiles, no constant reminders of what she was supposed to provide. The days were marked by simple things: the sound of wind through dry grass, the creak of the porch boards, the steady rhythm of work that asked effort but not explanation. Eli never hovered. He showed her how to feed the horses, where the tools were kept, which parts of the land were best left alone. When she struggled, he corrected her gently. When she succeeded, he treated it like the most ordinary thing in the world. That ordinariness unsettled her. She waited for questions about her body, for appointments, for pressure disguised as kindness. None came. Weeks passed, then months, and the tension she carried began to soften into confusion. One evening, as they sat near the fire with the sky stretched wide above them, the words finally spilled out of her. She told him about the doctors who never looked her in the eye, the files that reduced her to percentages, the way fertile had followed her like a shadow she couldn't outrun. She admitted she didn't even know if it was true. Eli listened without interrupting, his gaze fixed on the flames. When she finished, she felt hollow, exposed. "You should know," she said quietly. "In case you regret this." He shook his head. "I didn't bring you here to prove anything," he said. "And I don't measure people by what they can produce." The words settled over her, unfamiliar and heavy with sincerity. For the first time, she believed him. Not long after, her body began to feel different. At first, she dismissed it as fatigue, then nerves. When the dizziness came, sharp and sudden, she collapsed in the barn, the smell of hay and earth filling her lungs. The doctor Eli called arrived skeptical, flipping through notes with a practiced frown. Tests were run. Silence followed. "Well," the doctor said at last, surprise edging his voice, "she's strong, healthier than I expected." He glanced up. "And she's pregnant." The word echoed in Clara's mind, unreal and undeniable all at once. Tears blurred her vision, not from fear, but from the overwhelming sense of being believed at last. Eli stood beside her, steady as ever, his hand warm around hers. He didn't look triumphant. He didn't look vindicated. He looked like someone witnessing a truth unfold, not a victory won. And in that moment, Clara understood that what changed. Everything wasn't the proof growing. Inside her, it was the quiet place she'd been given to, finally become herself. The town gathered in a way Clara had never seen before, not for spectacle or gossip, but with a kind of cautious reverence. They stood outside the small clinic and along the dirt road, hats in hand, voices low. Word had traveled faster than she expected. The woman no one wanted, the claim no one believed, now undeniable. Inside, the air smelled of antiseptic and summer heat, and Clara's world narrowed to breath and pain and the steady reassurance of hands that did not let go of her. When the baby finally cried, strong and clear, the sound cut through every doubt she had ever carried. Tears streamed down her face as the nurse placed the child against her. Chest warm, alive, real. In that moment, the labels fell away completely. There was no board, no marker ink, no whispered judgments. There was only her heartbeat and the tiny weight resting against it. Proof not of fertility, but of endurance. Eli stood close, his expression quiet and awed. He didn't speak until she looked at him, searching his face for expectation. There was none. Just gratitude, just wonder. He brushed his thumb against the baby's curled fingers. Careful, almost reverent. "You did good," he said softly. "Not we, not I, you." The days that followed felt like a gentle unfolding. Neighbors brought food, blankets, small handmade toys. Some avoided her eyes, shame flickering briefly before disappearing. Others met her gaze openly, humbled by what they had witnessed. No one mentioned the auction. No one repeated the old rumors. The agency sent a single letter, brief and impersonal, informing her that her file had been closed. No apology followed. She hadn't expected one, and she didn't need it. On the porch of the ranch, Clara watched the sun dip low as she rocked her child. The land stretched wide and forgiving, untouched by the judgments that once defined her. Eli leaned against the railing nearby, giving her space while never truly leaving. She realized then how much had changed without fanfare. She had not been rescued. She had not been redeemed by motherhood. She had simply been given room to exist without conditions. People would tell the story differently, she knew. They would say the cowboy proved them wrong, that the claim had finally been validated. But Clara understood the truth better than any of them. What proved them wrong wasn't what her body could do. It was that she had always been worthy, long before anyone bothered to see it.